traders, in this video I will show you how to install and use the Ghostpivot Analyzer, which is an advanced version of Rob Booker's Ghost Pivot Dashboard Indicator for MetaTrader 4. As a first step, you need to extract the zip file that has been given to you after your purchase. I will extract this file by right-clicking on the file, open with Windows Explorer. Open up the Ghostpivots Analyzer folder, and in there you will see 3 files. All 3 files need to be copied into the indicators folder of your MT4 installation. In order to locate this folder, go back to your MT4 installation, File, Open Data folder, navigate to MQL4, Indicators. This is where all 3 files need to be copied. So I will select those files, copy, back to my target folder, and paste. Next, I will go back to my MT4 installation, go to the navigator, right-click on any item, and click Refresh. If everything worked, you will now see 2 new indicators in your list. The Ghostpivots Analyzer, which is the dashboard for showing multiple ghost pivots across various symbols, and the Ghostpivots Indicator Plus, which is a chart indicator. In order to add the Ghostpivot Analyzer to a chart, you simply drag and drop it onto the chart. Once done, you will see in the Inputs tab a variety of options to customize the indicator. The most important one, just to get it running, is the first one, the license key. Make sure to enter your proper license key in this field. And then go back to the Comments tab and make sure that the Allow DLL Imports checkbox is checked. And press OK. After a little while, the Ghostpivot Analyzer dashboard will be shown on the chart. Next, I will show you how to hide the price graph and the grid from the chart so that the dashboard is more clearly visible. As a first step, you change the price graph to a line graph. Then right-click on your chart, go to Properties, and select the color for the line graph to be white or none to match your background color. Then go to Common and deselect the Show Grid option and select OK. Once done, I recommend to save this chart style as a template. In order to do so, right-click on the chart, go to Template, and go to Save Template. And give it a descriptive name. In my case, I will call it Ghostpivots Analyzer, and save. Once done, every time you want to reapply the Ghostpivot Analyzer dashboard, you simply need to load the template. Right-click on the chart, Template, and go down to Ghostpivots Analyzer. And the dashboard will then be shown on the chart. Next, I will explain what you can see on this dashboard. So we have 3 basic columns for each symbol: daily, weekly, and monthly. And the first value in each column shows the distance of the current price to the ghost pivot. This distance is denoted in pips. For example, AUD USD currently has a reading of 18.3 for the daily column, meaning that the current price is 18.3 pips below the ghost pivot. This is a potential opportunity to go long, as price is likely to retrace back to the ghost pivot. Let's take GBP AUD. Here the reading is minus 49.1, meaning that the current price is 49.1 pips above the ghost pivot. This is a potential opportunity to go short, as price may retrace back down to the ghost pivot level. Next, we continue with the second value in each column. As you can see, this value currently always reads NA, not available. In order to populate this column, you will first need to click the Load Historical Hit Percentages button down here. Once clicked, you will have to wait a couple of seconds for the indicator to load all the historical data and to calculate the hit percentages. So what does this value tell us? It tells us, based on the historical data available in your MT4, what was the hit percentage for a given pivot. Let's take the example of GBP AUD. Currently the pivot is 49.3 pips below the price, and the value of 68.8% is the historical hit percentage that this pivot will be hit within the next session. Let's look at the chart of GBP AUD. I pulled it up on the right hand side of the screen, and let's apply the Ghost Pivot Indicator plus Chart Indicator. Just by dragging it in, we'll keep the default settings and we'll press OK. Okay, so what can we see here? We see that the daily Ghost Pivot is definitely below the price, and it will be below the price of 48.6 pips. You can also read this in this upper label here. Okay, so the percentage of 60, or in this case 70%, roughly 70%, is the historical hit rate that price will retrace back down to this level within the next session. The hit percentages are calculated based on the distance from price to the current pivot and also the hour of the day we are in. The third value in each column shows a reading of the RSI, the Relative Strength Index. A label of OB means that the RSI is currently overbought. A reading of OS means that the RSI is currently oversold. A reading of OB minus means that the RSI was overbought but has retraced since down to not overbought territory. And the reading of OS plus, that's not on the chart right now, would mean that the RSI was oversold but has since retraced back up to not oversold territory. So how can we interpret these values? Let's stay with the example of GBP AUD. We know that price is above the Ghost Pivot by 55 pips. We know that if the pivot was this far below price at this time of the day, it was hit historically speaking with roughly 50 to 60% of the time. But we also know that the RSI is overbought. An overbought RSI reading can be an indicator for price to decline. We may want to wait until the RSI reading shows OB minus, meaning that the RSI was overbought but has since declined to non-overbought territory, basically giving us confirmation that price is now declining and hopefully will decline all the way back to the Ghost Pivot. Let's look at some of the configuration options for the dashboard. In order to see these options, right-click on the chart, go to Indicators list, double-click on Ghostpivots Analyzer. All the options are displayed in the Inputs tab. Maybe the most important option is the symbol list parameter. With this parameter, you define which symbols should be shown in the dashboard. Every symbol must be separated from another symbol by an underscore. So in order to remove a symbol, you can simply remove a symbol from the list. Let's say you want to get rid of AUD/USD. We simply remove it. And in order to add a symbol, we simply add a new symbol separated by an underscore. Let's say we want to add AUD/CHF. We press OK. We close. And after a little while, the dashboard will be updated with the new symbol list. It is important to note that every symbol of the dashboard must be part of the market watch. If the symbol is not part of the market watch, the values in the dashboard will be inaccurate or not available. In the case of AUD/CHF, we see a pivot reading of NA across the board. This is an indicator for the case that this symbol is not yet part of the market watch and that we will need to add it. In order to add a symbol to the market watch, go to the market watch, right click, go to symbols, and then add the symbol by double clicking on it. We close, and after a little while the dashboard will refresh and the pivot readings will be available. Please note that whenever you make a change to any of the parameters of the dashboard, you will need to click the Load Historical Percentages button in order to load the hit percentages. Once clicked, the percentages will be available in the dashboard as well. Let's look at the other parameters that are available to configure the dashboard. Right-click on the chart, Indicators list, double-click Ghostpivots Analyzer, and you will see the parameters. We already talked about the symbol list. Let's continue with the dashboard display settings. These parameters can be used to adjust the display of the dashboard. Orientation can be left or right, meaning that the dashboard will either be displayed on the left-hand side of the chart or the right-hand side. Offset from the side border defines the number of pixels that the dashboard should be displayed either from the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Offset from the top border is the number of pixels from the upper border of your chart. Horizontal cell spacing is the spacing between columns. Vertical cell spacing is the spacing between rows. Font size header and font size row is the font size for the header of the dashboard or the rows of the dashboard respectively. Text color is the text color for the column headers and the symbols. Up color and down color are the colors for the cells. An up color means that the price is currently below the pivot but likely to increase. Therefore the default is green. Down color means that price is currently above the pivot but likely to decrease or decline to the pivot level. Therefore displayed in red. Symbol header, daily header, weekly header and monthly header define the labels for the column headers. Load historical data button label is the label for the button to load the historical hit percentages, and load historical data button background color is the background color of this button. Let's skip for the time being the time label settings and continue with the daily pivot settings, and in particular the RSI time frame, RSI overbought level, oversold level and RSI period settings. These are the RSI settings to be used to determine whether the RSI is overbought, oversold, or neither. We have the same settings for the weekly pivot settings and the monthly pivot settings. So for example, let's change the RSI overbought level from 60 to 70 for the daily time frame and from 40 to 30 for the oversold level. And press OK. We'll close. And after a little while, the dashboard will update. And as we can see here, neither of our symbols are currently oversold or overbought. Next, I will talk about the notification-specific parameters. Notifications are very useful. They will alert you whenever a certain condition that you're interested in arises. This can be a huge time saver. It eliminates the need to observe the dashboard manually. Instead, you would simply pull up the dashboard whenever a notification is generated. Notifications can be generated based on the pivot type, which can be daily, weekly, or monthly. The minimal pivot distance, that is the distance that price needs to be at least apart from the current ghost pivot. The pivot direction, long, short, or both. The minimal probability. And the RSI state. OB or OS means that the RSI needs to be either overbought for going short or oversold for going long. OB minus or OS plus means that the RSI had to be overbought but is now below overbought territory, or had to be oversold and is now above oversold territory, or any, meaning that we do not care about the RSI state. Refresh period defines the interval within which the dashboard will be checked whether an alert should be generated. Mail alert, pop-up alert, sound alert, or smartphone notification are the different types of alerts that can be used for notifications. In the current case, for example, no alerts would be generated as all the alert types are set to false. But if I were to set, let's say, pop-up alert to true, then in the current setting, we would receive a pop-up whenever a weekly pivot has a minimum distance of at least 60 pips, either positive or negatives, as indicated by the pivot direction, and the min probability for hitting this pivot is at least 70%, and the RSI state for this particular symbol is either overbought or oversold. Finally, I will talk about the time label settings and the session start hour and the session start minute and the time zone offset settings for the daily pivots. In order to understand these settings, let's go back to a particular chart. So I will close these for now, and I will maximize my GBP AUD chart. The chart shows the Ghost Pivots Indicator Plus indicator in its default settings. But if we go to its parameters, we can see that also this indicator has the settings for time label, and the daily pivot section has settings for session start hours, session start minutes, and time zone offset. I will go ahead and enable the time label and set it to true. As a result, the current broker time is shown in the left lower corner. Let's go back to the settings. And this time I will enable the Show Session Separator sessions. Once enabled, you will see horizontal bars on the chart. These are the separators for the daily sessions, showing the beginning of a daily session and the end of the daily session, which in turn denotes the beginning of a new daily session. By default, each session starts at 0 o'clock of the time zone of your broker. My broker is Oanda, and this particular Oanda installation uses EST for the time zone. Therefore, each daily session starts at midnight EST. You may not want your session to start at midnight EST. Instead, you may want your session to start at 5 p.m. EST. This happens to be the time when the market first opens on Sunday night. In order to make this change, we go back to the settings, go to Indicators list, and we change the session start hours parameter from 0, denoting midnight, to 17, denoting 5 p.m. And we click OK. As a result, now each session start bar denotes 5 p.m. EST, giving us exactly 5 sessions per week. Another way to achieve this is to go back to the settings, but instead of changing the session start hours, we would change the time zone offset. Currently my time zone is EST, but for most brokers their time zone is GMT plus 2, which is 7 hours ahead of EST. So I could simply enter a value of 7 here, leave the session start hours to 0, and click OK. And we get the exact same results. The reason why most brokers use GMT plus 2 is because midnight of each day denotes 5 p.m. EST, which in turn denotes the market open. You will also note that the time label on the left lower corner of the chart has now been adjusted. It no longer shows the EST time, which happens to my time zone as well, but it shows the GMT plus 2 time, 1938. Now that we understand the time zone settings, let's go back to our dashboard. We'll go to the settings, and as we can see here, we have a similar label for time label. I'll set it to true. And in the daily pivot settings, we have parameters for session start hour, session start minute, and time zone offset. So let's say I want my daily session to not start at 0 o'clock EST, but instead at 0 o'clock GMT plus 2. All I need to do is to put a time zone offset of 7 hours, just like on the chart, and leave the session start hour and session start minute to 0, and I will set the show time label to true. Once applied, we'll see that the time is now displayed in the lower left hand side of the chart, showing the GMT plus 2 time. And all the pivot distances are now relative to this new session start time. I will conclude this video by revisiting GBP AUD. If you remember, at the beginning of the video, price was above this level here, and we had an RSI reading of overbought. But we also had a hit percentage that the daily pivot down here would be hit within this or the next session of around 60%. As we can see, price since has declined much closer to our daily pivot level. This showcases the power of pivots. They have this magnetic property which attracts price to return back to the pivot level. The Ghost Pivot Analyzer shows all the ghost pivots in one consolidated view along with the hit percentages and the RSI readings. The custom notifications will be a huge time saver for you. You no longer need to observe this dashboard manually, but instead you will receive a custom alert whenever your condition is met, and then you can take action accordingly. Thanks again for purchasing this product. Good luck in your trading endeavors.